Welcome to Narrative 4 of Dialed In. In this series, we are working to serve filtered coffee to specific flavor and mouthfeel targets. For flavor, we are looking to extract 20 to 24% of the 30% that's possible to extract from a coffee dose. For mouthfeel, we are working to have a concentration between 1.2 to 1.4 total dissolved solids. This in the filtered coffee will provide the flavor with a pleasant longevity. What you see in front of you are the necessary components to reach our targets. These are also tools that help the aroma, flavor, and mouthfeel be noticeable and complex. Coming up will be an overview of our 7-part process. This process will explain the important steps to reach our targets. We will also go over at the end how this more aromatic and flavorful coffee is only possible when there is a union of similar intentions. To reach our flavor and mouthfeel targets, we have a 7-part procedure. We will first take into account some important aspects of the origin, like what is the varietal of the seed and what are the flavors associated with it, and what is the meters above sea level that this seed was grown at, and how the seed was harvested, processed, and dried. This will reflect the flavor that it will have in the cup. The next part is conducting tests to pair the origin with the water profile and extraction device that complements it. We will test the origin with a variety of options of water profiles and extraction devices. Once we have familiarized ourselves with the origin and have paired it with the complementary tools, we will conduct extraction attempts to reach our targets. These attempts are recipes that consist of the dose and yield, grind setting, and water temperature. We will adjust these settings to get closer to our targets of 20 to 24% extraction and 1.2 to 1.4 total dissolved solids. The first part in our process is getting to know what we're working with in terms of the origin. The first thing we want to know is what is the varietal of this origin. We are working with a new uncommon varietal, Kiroso. It's a new planted varietal believed to be of East African origin. However, this origin was grown in South America. The roaster provided us notes that Kiroso will have a lively acidity, ripe stone fruit flavors, and berry-like sweetness. Another important attribute of this origin is that it was grown at 2100 meters above sea level. We will classify the density of the seed as high. This is also the highest grown origin we have attempted to dial in. For processing, this origin was hand-picked at peak ripeness. It was floated in water to remove the ones that are defective. The fruits were then held in sacks for 2 days. It was depulped and fermented underwater in stainless steel tanks for 5 days. Because the seed stayed inside the whole fruit for a period and was fermented underwater in a steel tank, we can expect the transparent, juicy, bright, and complex coffee. The next part in our journey is finding a water profile that will complement this origin, where the flavor is present, vibrant, and multi-layered. We're avoiding water profiles that muddle, over, or underdevelop the flavor. For Narrative 4, we have updated our testing procedure. We are now performing a cupping with 3 different water profiles. Each falls within the ideal water for coffee zone concluded by the Water for Coffee book by Dashwood and Hendon. Here are the 3 water profiles we're testing. The first is the Peak Water Filter. This was designed by the previous mentioned Maxwell Colonna Dashwood. Here's our cupping recipe, the dose, yield, grind setting, and water temperature. And this is our recipe protocol that we will perform. Coming back to the Peak Water Filter, since the roast is on the lighter spectrum and the varietal Kiroso will have a floral, fruity, and complex flavor profile, we're going with a setting of 3.2, which leans more towards the hard water side. This setting has worked well with this roaster in previous experiences. The second profile is the Lotus Water Light and Bright recipe, which ideally should work well with the roast development of this origin. The third profile is the Raw Lotus Water recipe number 2. In previous narratives, it has proved complementary to a variety of roast profiles and origins. After we perform the cupping, we try to remove as much of the grounds and oils as possible. We also allow the solution to cool. We preferably like to analyze the liquid when it's close to body temperature. After comparing and contrasting the 3 different water profiles, the Peak filter stood out. The flavor felt developed, not muddled, but transparent. This will be the complementary water profile we'll be going forward with. The next part in our dial-in procedure is pairing the origin with the complementary extraction device. Here's the 2 extraction devices that we'll be testing the origin with. the Simplify, which is a percolation device, and the Tricolate, which is a hybrid device, both a full immersion and percolation device. They also both have circular bottoms, which allows less bypass. Here's the recipe we performed with both devices. The only difference is that we use a slightly coarser setting with the Tricolate, which is what is recommended for that device. We also only did one pulse port with the Tricolate. Here are the extraction and concentration numbers we got. 17.75% and 1.17 total dissolved solids for the Simplify, and 19.42% and 1.24 total dissolved solids for the Tricolate. Although our numbers were much lower with the Simplify, this origin appears to have a delicate and complex flavor profile. It felt the Simplify was showcasing the origin in this way. The Tricolate had a muddled experience. The complexity wasn't present. How the roaster described the origin, it felt the Simplify extraction was more in line with that. We will go into part 4 with the Simplify as the complementary extraction device. Part 4 begins our goal of trying to reach our flavor and mouthfeel targets within 6 extraction attempts. In attempts number 1 to 3, we will make bigger adjustments to hopefully be close to our targets by attempts number 4 to 6. For attempt number 1, we increased the dose and made a fine grind adjustment from our extraction device test attempt. For the dose, we went from 18 grams to 18.20, and for the grind, we changed from 8.6 to 8.3. We also increased our water temperature from 210 to 212. We achieved an extraction percentage of 18.21% and a concentration of 1.21 total dissolved solids. From the device testing attempt, we have increased both our extraction and concentration numbers. The flavor is under-extracted, but the concentration is at a good level. For attempt number 2, our goal will be to get closer to our targets. For the second attempt, we only made a fine grind adjustment from 8.3 to 8. Since we're hoping to make the biggest change in terms of the extraction percentage, we decided to first focus on our grind adjustment. Both our extraction and concentration increased. We went from 18.21% to 18.79% and 1.21 to 1.26 total dissolved solids. The concentration feels better. The weight feels sufficient. However, the flavors still taste under-extracted. In the next attempt, we'll work to increase the extraction. In attempt number 3, we made a bigger fine grind adjustment from 8 to 7.5. We kept all other factors the same. As we mentioned before, attempts number 1 to 3, we will make bigger adjustments to see how our numbers increase or decrease. Ideally, our goal is to be close to our targets by attempt number 3, so that in attempts number 4 to 6, all that we need to do is fine-tune our recipe. Our numbers somewhat stayed the same. The extraction percentage went from 18.79 to 18.75, and the concentration went from 1.26 to 1.25. Evaluating attempt number 3, the mouthfeel still feels sufficient, but the flavor is underdeveloped, and we are not close to our flavor targets yet of 20 to 24%. For attempts number 4 to 6, our goal is to still get closer to those flavor targets. But we do want to maintain our concentration number since the weight feels sufficient. For the extraction, we're thinking since going in a finer direction proved unsuccessful, we will try coarser settings and see what our numbers look like. Here again are the goals for attempts number 4 to 6. For attempt number 4, we made a grind adjustment that falls between attempt number 2 and 3. We went with 7.8. All other factors were kept the same. Our numbers did increase. Our extraction rose to 19.23 and our concentration rose to 1.28. The flavor tastes under-extracted, but it's tasting more developed. Although the concentration increased, it still feels sufficient. The goal for attempt number 5 is to reach 20% extraction and beyond, while also maintaining our concentration number. Since a coarser adjustment proved positive, we went in the same direction with this attempt, and we used the grind setting of 7.9. Once more, all other factors were kept the same. Unfortunately, our numbers didn't increase but stayed the same. For extraction, we went from 19.23 to 19.24, and 1.28 to 1.29 for the concentration. For attempt number 6, we'll continue with our efforts to try to increase the extraction. In attempt number 2, our grind setting was at 8, and our extraction was at 18.79. We felt going coarser than this might not increase our extraction. So we went in a finer direction, 7.6, and we kept all other factors the same. Our extraction only increased minimally, from 19.24 to 19.27. The concentration stayed the same. The flavor tastes underdeveloped. It feels there's definitely more flavor to extract. We mentioned in the previous video, narratives 2 and 3, that if we didn't reach our targets, and if Simplify was the device that we're using, that we would try another percolation device. We have been testing another device that could possibly have more heat retention and less bypass. We'll see if this change will make an improvement on our numbers. Here is the StagX stripper. The device we'll be testing to see if it can improve our numbers and get us closer to our extraction targets. It is a percolation device like the Simplify. It's different in that it's more insulated. It can possibly retain heat better. It has a flat bottom with 10 holes, and we feel it should allow less bypass. We also put an aluminum mesh under the filter. This is to prevent clogging and a slow drip rate. We're hoping for an uninhibited drawdown. We will be performing the same extraction protocol as we do with the Simplify since both are percolation devices. As we mentioned before, we will be performing the same extraction protocol as we did with the Simplify, 1 bloom and 2 pulse pours. We will also physically rotate the device throughout the extraction process to ensure a flat bed drawdown. To know if the StagX could improve our numbers and to push the limits, we are testing with the grind adjustment of 7.3. We gathered numbers from our previous attempt, and our extraction increased positively. For this attempt, our intention is to continue to push the limit. We made a fine grind adjustment from 7.3 to 7. We kept the dose and water temperature the same. Here are the numbers from our 2 attempts. In the first attempt, our extraction went up to 19.83 and the TDS increased to 1.31. For the second attempt, our numbers decreased minimally. At this point, we likely had entered the point of diminishing returns. It's clear that our numbers increased with our first attempt on the StagX. We got close to our target extraction range of 20 to 24%. Although we didn't reach our targets with these 2 attempts, we were close right away, and that's a productive sign. Thinking about what will help us achieve our flavor targets within 6 extraction attempts, it became clear that the StagX stripper would help us do that. It will replace the Simplify in future narratives as one of the 2 extraction devices we'll use to test out new origins. Normally at this point we would categorize the aroma and flavor, but since we didn't reach our flavor targets, we felt it wouldn't be right to do so. There are 2 takeaways from this narrative. The first is that we were not successful in dialing in this origin. The second takeaway is more positive. We transitioned to a new extraction device that gave us better numbers, and we updated our cupping protocols. Both should help expedite and improve our process. Here's the identity of the farmer and the roaster of this origin. David Berrio and Say Roasters created a flavorful origin. If they work together again next year, we will purchase a bag and do our best to play a part in showcasing the potential of this origin. Us as Dialed In, a project focusing on serving filtered coffee to higher flavor and mouthfeel targets, we will take the lessons we learned from this narrative and move towards the next narrative.